I'm Stephanie, 26 female. I live in a quiet suburban house that I grew up in, a house that has started to feel less like a home and more like a beautifully decorated cage. I work from home as a medical transcriptionist, a job that suits my current state of existence, isolated and quiet. This story is about how I discovered that the person I trusted most in the world, my own mother, was the architect of my prison, systematically poisoning me to keep me dependent and trapping me within these four walls. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. For the last 3 years, my life has been governed by an invisible force, a thick, suffocating fog that I just couldn't seem to push through. It wasn't always like this. At 23, I was vibrant. I had just graduated with a certificate in medical transcription, landed my first remote job, and was excitedly saving up for an apartment with my friend Liam. We had plans. We were going to get a place downtown, explore the city, and finally start our adult lives. The future felt like a wide-open road, and I was ready to hit the accelerator. Then the fatigue started. It wasn't the normal kind of tired you feel after a long day. This was a bone-deep exhaustion, a leaden weight that settled in my limbs and made even the simplest tasks, like showering or making breakfast, feel like climbing a mountain. My brain, once sharp and quick, became a swamp of confusion. I'd lose my train of thought mid-sentence, forget common words, and struggle to focus on the audio files for work. My productivity plummeted, and I was in constant fear of losing the one thing that gave me a sense of purpose. My mother, Brenda, was my rock through it all. A homemaker her entire life, she thrived on taking care of others. When my father passed away 5 years ago, it was just the two of us, and she poured all her energy into me. As my health declined, her caregiving went into overdrive. "Oh, my poor girl," she'd say, her face a mask of loving concern. "You just rest. Mommy will take care of everything." She'd bring me meals in bed, fluff my pillows, and manage my medication. After months of debilitating symptoms, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, an autoimmune disorder where my body attacks its own thyroid gland. Finally, an answer. Dr. Chen, my GP, was optimistic. "It's very manageable, Stephanie," he assured me, writing a prescription for levothyroxine, a synthetic thyroid hormone. "You'll start on a low dose, we'll monitor your levels and adjust as needed. You should start feeling like your old self in a few weeks." Those first few weeks were magical. The fog began to lift. I had energy again. I started working full-time hours, reconnected with Liam, and we began apartment hunting in earnest. I felt life flowing back into me, and I was ecstatic. My mother seemed happy for me too, though I sometimes caught a flicker of something else in her eyes, something I couldn't quite decipher. "Just be careful not to overdo it, sweetie," she'd caution, her smile a little too tight. "You need to build your strength back slowly." I took her advice, but I was eager to reclaim my life. The medication was my key to freedom. My mother insisted on managing my pills. She bought one of those weekly pill organizers and would fill it every Sunday night. "It's just easier this way," she'd explain. "With your brain fog, you might forget, and we can't have that." It made sense. In the beginning, my memory was shot, and I was grateful for her help. Every morning, she'd bring me the little pill with a glass of water, watching until I swallowed it. It was our routine. But the progress didn't last. After about 2 months of feeling good, the symptoms started creeping back. The fatigue returned, heavier than before. The brain fog rolled in, thicker and more disorienting. My hair started falling out in alarming clumps and my skin became dry and flaky. It was a crushing disappointment. We went back to Dr. Chen, who was perplexed. My blood work showed my thyroid levels were still wildly out of whack. "This is unusual," he said, frowning at the lab report. "The medication should be working. Let's increase the dosage." This became our cycle. Heat up the dose, I'd feel better for a few weeks, and then I'd crash again, each time harder than the last. My hopes for moving out with Liam evaporated. I couldn't even consistently work, let alone manage a life on my own. Liam was patient and supportive, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Our dream was slipping away, and it was my body's fault. I had to quit my full-time job and switch to sporadic freelance work, making just enough to cover my personal expenses. The idea of saving for a security deposit was a joke. I became a permanent resident in my childhood bedroom. My work. LD shrank to those four walls, the living room, and the endless doctor's appointments. Brenda was a constant presence, the perfect nurse. She managed my diet, my schedule, and of course my medication. Her concern was my reality. "Don't you worry about a thing," she'd coo, stroking my hair as I cried in frustration. "Mommy's here. I'll always be here to take care of you." Her devotion was suffocating, but I felt too weak and too guilty to push back. She had given up her life for me, hadn't she? How could I be anything but grateful? Yet a tiny, persistent voice in the back of my mind whispered that something was wrong. It wasn't just the illness. It was the pattern, the brief periods of wellness followed by inexplicable relapses. Dr. Chen was stumped. He'd run every test imaginable, looking for other underlying conditions, but found nothing. He even suggested I might be suffering from depression, which was causing some of my symptoms. I tried antidepressants, but they did nothing for the physical exhaustion or the mental haze. The worst part was the loss of myself. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. My face was puffy, my eyes were dull, and the spark that used to be there was gone. I was a ghost haunting the hallways of my own home. My dreams, my ambitions, my independence, all of it had been stolen by this relentless disease. And through it all, my mother was there, holding my hand, telling me she loved me, and promising she would never, ever leave my side. At the time, I thought it was a promise of love. I had no idea it was a threat. My life settled into a monotonous rhythm of sickness and dependency. Days blurred into one another, marked only by the rising and setting of the sun outside my bedroom window. My conversations with the outside world were mostly through text messages with Liam. He was my lifeline, the one person who still treated me like the old Stephanie, not the fragile patient I had become. He'd send me funny memes, updates on his job as a software developer, and pictures of apartments he was now looking at alone. Each picture was a pang in my chest, a reminder of the life I was supposed to be living. "You'll get there, Steph," he'd text after I'd lamented my situation. "We just have to figure out what's going on with your health first." His unwavering belief in me was both a comfort and a source of immense guilt. I felt like I was holding him back, a dead weight tethered to his ambitions. My mother, Brenda, on the other hand, seemed to find a renewed sense of purpose in my illness. Our house was immaculate, her cooking was gourmet, and her entire day revolved around my needs. She'd bring me breakfast in bed, a perfectly arranged tray with a small flower in a bud vase. "To brighten your day, sweetie," she'd say with a beatific smile. Then she'd present my morning pill and a glass of water. "Time for your medicine. Let's get you on the road to feeling better." Her attentiveness was absolute, but it had an edge to it. She discouraged me from doing things for myself. If I tried to go downstairs to get a glass of water, she'd intercept me. No, you sit down, you'll tire yourself out. I'll get it for you." If I mentioned wanting to try a short walk around the block on a rare good day, she'd look worried. "Are you sure that's a good idea, honey? You wouldn't want to trigger a relapse." Her concern was a velvet trap, soft and comforting but inescapable. She was also subtly possessive of her role as my caregiver. When Liam would visit, she'd hover, offering him drinks and snacks but also steering the conversation towards my fragility. She had a very rough night, she'd inform him in a hushed, confidential tone. Her joints were aching so badly. I was up with her until 3 a.m. I hadn't had any joint pain, but I was too tired and foggy to contradict her. I'd just sit there, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, as she painted a picture of a devoted mother and her desperately ill child. Liam started to notice the strange dynamic. After one visit, he texted me from his car. "Your mom is a lot." "She's just worried about me," I replied, the automatic defense springing to my lips. "I know," he texted back, "but it's like she doesn't want you to get better. She talks about your sickness almost like she's proud of it." His words sent a chill down my spine. Proud of it? That couldn't be right. But the thought planted a seed of unease. I started paying more attention to her words, her actions. I noticed how her mood would brighten when I had a particularly bad day. When I was confined to bed, unable to even read, she would be at her most cheerful, bustling around, humming to herself as she cooked my favorite soup. Conversely, on the rare mornings I woke up with a bit of energy, a flicker of disappointment would cross her face before being replaced by her customary smile. "Oh, that's wonderful, dear. But don't push it." The first concrete crack in my trust appeared over something trivia. A new pill organizer. The one my mother had been using was old, and the latches on the compartments were starting to wear out. I ordered a new one online, a brightly colored one with a more secure locking mechanism. When it arrived, I showed it to her, thinking she'd be pleased. "Oh," she said, her smile faltering as she turned it over in her hands. "This is nice, but I'm so used to the old one." "This one is better, Mom," I said. "The lids on the old one pop open sometimes. I don't want my pills to get mixed up or lost." "I'm perfectly capable of managing the old one, Stephanie," she replied, her tones suddenly sharp. "I've been doing it for years without any problems." She put the new organizer back in its box and pushed it aside. "We'll just stick with what works." Her reaction was disproportionate to the situation. It was just a plastic box, but she acted as if I had criticized her very being. For the first time, I felt a genuine flash of suspicion. Why was she so attached to that specific, worn-out pill organizer? Why was she so resistant to a simple change? I didn't have an answer, but the question lodged itself in my mind, refusing to be dismissed. A week later, another strange incident occurred. Dr. Chen had called in a new prescription for a higher dose of levothyroxine. I got the notification from the pharmacy that it was ready for pickup. Usually, my mother handled all the pharmacy runs. "I'm heading out to the grocery store, Mom," I said, feeling a little better that day. "I can swing by and pick up my new prescription." Panic flashed across her face. "No, there's no need for that. It's supposed to rain later and you shouldn't be out. I'll get it tomorrow morning." "It's not a big deal, Mom. It's just around the corner," I insisted, puzzled by her vehement opposition. "Stephanie, I said I will handle it," she snapped, her voice hard. "You are not well enough to be running errands. End of discussion." The force of her command stunned me into silence. I retreated to my room, my heart pounding. Her reaction was beyond overprotective. It was controlling. It was as if she needed to be the sole gatekeeper of my treatment. Liam's words echoed in my head. "It's like she doesn't want you to get better." The thought was monstrous, a betrayal of everything I understood about a mother's love. I tried to push it away, to rationalize her behavior as anxiety, as the stress of being a long-term caregiver. But the seed of doubt had taken root, and it was beginning to sprout. I was living in her house, eating the food she cooked, and taking the pills she gave me. My entire life was in her hands. For the first time, that thought didn't feel comforting. It felt terrifying. The unease lingered for days, a low-grade fever in the back of my mind. My mother's behavior, once a source of comfort, now felt cloying and strange. I started watching her more closely, analyzing her every move, searching for clues that would either confirm my terrifying suspicion or, hopefully, prove it was just paranoia born from my illness. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday. It was the day after she had picked up my new, higher-dosage prescription. That morning, she brought me my pill as usual, placing the small white tablet in my palm with a smile. "Here you go, sweetie. The new, stronger dose. Dr. Chen is so hopeful this will be the one that finally works." I swallowed it under her watchful eye, but something felt off. For the past 2 years, every time my dose was increased, the pill itself looked different. The dosage is imprinted on the tablet, and sometimes the manufacturer changes, resulting in a different shape or color. This pill looked identical to the lower dose one I had been taking for the past 2 months. I knew this because I had spent countless hours staring at them, willing them to work. I dismissed it as a coincidence. Maybe the new dose from this specific manufacturer just happened to look the same, but the seed of doubt was there. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, my mind racing. I needed to see the prescription bottle. I needed to see for myself what the label said. My mother was fiercely protective of my medications. She kept them in the locked medicine cabinet in her master bathroom, claiming it was for my own safety. "We wouldn't want you to get confused and take the wrong thing," she'd said once. Now, that excuse sounded sinister. My opportunity came that evening. Brenda was part of a book club that met every Tuesday night. It was the one time of the week she left the house for a few hours. As soon as I heard the front door click shut and her car pull out of the driveway, my heart began to pound with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. This was it. I crept into her bedroom. It felt like a massive violation of her privacy, but my need to know was stronger than my guilt. Her bathroom was pristine, smelling of lavender and bleach. The medicine cabinet was a large, mirrored unit above the sink. And, as expected, it was locked. A small, simple lock that required a key. Panic seized me for a moment. Where would she keep the key? I thought about her routines, her habits. She was a creature of habit. I started searching her room. I checked her jewelry box, the top drawer of her nightstand, and the small decorative dish on her dresser where she kept loose change. Nothing. Then I remembered. Years ago, when I was a teenager, I'd once been locked out of the house, and my dad told me about the emergency key Mom kept. "Your mother has a hiding spot for everything important," he'd said with a laugh. Her spot for the spare house key had been a loose brick in the garden path. Maybe she had a similar spot for this. I went back to her dresser. Tucked away at the back, behind a row of neatly folded sweaters, was a small, velvet-lined box. It wasn't a jewelry box, it was a keepsake box. Inside, I found my baby teeth, a lock of my hair from my first haircut, and a tiny silver key on a simple chain. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the lock. It clicked open. I swung the mirrored door and was met with rows of neatly organized bottles. There were her blood pressure pills, some over-the-counter pain relievers, and then, on the middle shelf, my entire history of thyroid medication. There were several orange prescription bottles, each with my name and Dr. Chen's on the label. I grabbed the newest one, the one she had just picked up. The label was clear. Levothyroxine 125 mcg. That was the new, higher dose. I twisted the cap off. Inside were dozens of small, white, round pills. I tipped one into my palm. My breath hitched. It was an octagonal pill, not round, and it was a different shade of white. It was clearly, undeniably different from the pill she had given me that morning. My blood ran cold. I frantically opened the next bottle on the shelf, the previous prescription. Levothyroxine 100 mcg. I opened it. Inside were the small, round, white pills, the same ones she had given me today, the same ones she had been giving me all along. The truth crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. She was switching them. She was filling my weekly organizer with my old, lower-dose prescription while keeping the new, effective one hidden away. She wasn't just managing my medication, she was tampering with it. She was deliberately keeping me sick. I sank to the floor, the two open bottles in my hands. The room spun. Every instance of her overbearing concern, every time she discouraged my independence, every tight smile when I mentioned feeling a little better, it all clicked into place. It wasn't love. It was control. She didn't want me to get well and move out. She didn't want me to have a life of my own. She wanted a patient. She wanted a dependent child she could care for forever, a permanent fixture in her lonely life. She wanted me to be her purpose, even if it meant destroying me. The shock gave way to a wave of pure, cold rage. The last 3 years of my life, the lost job, the lost apartment, the lost friendships, the endless fog and pain, had been a lie. A lie she had carefully constructed, pill by pill, day by day. She had watched me suffer, had feigned sympathy, had held me while I cried over the very symptoms she was inflicting upon me. I sat there on her cold tile floor for what felt like an eternity, the evidence in my hands. The betrayal was so profound, so monstrous, it was hard to comprehend. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated, long-term act of abuse perpetrated by my own mother. I thought about her bringing me that pill every morning with a loving smile. The hand that was supposed to be feeding me, healing me, was actually the one holding me down, keeping me drowning. I knew then that I couldn't just leave. This was more than a family dispute. This was criminal, and I needed proof. Cold, hard, undeniable proof. The rage that had frozen me on the bathroom floor began to thaw, replaced by a chillingly clear sense of purpose. Crying wouldn't fix this. Confronting her without irrefutable proof would be useless. She would deny everything, call me confused, and use my brain fog against me. She would paint me as an ungrateful, delusional daughter. I needed more than just the swapped pills in the bottles. I needed to document her actions in a way that no one, not the police, not a lawyer, not a doctor, could ever dispute. I carefully put the pills back into their respective bottles, locked the cabinet, and returned the key to its hiding place, making sure everything looked exactly as I had found it. I went back to my room, my mind working faster and more clearly than it had in years. The adrenaline of my discovery was a powerful stimulant, cutting through the lethargy. My plan began to form. I needed to document everything. I was a medical transcriptionist. My entire job revolved around meticulous, accurate records. I would apply that skill to my own life, to M. Y own case. I started that very night. I found a simple, unassuming notebook and labeled it Health Journal. The first entry was a detailed account of what I had found in the bathroom, including the prescription numbers, dosages, 125 mcg versus 100 mcg, and a physical description of the pills from each bottle. I took pictures of the pills from both bottles side by side with my phone, making sure the date and timestamp were visible. I emailed the pictures to a new, secret email address I created, so there was a digital, time-stamped record that couldn't be easily deleted. From that day forward, my life became a covert operation. Every morning when my mother brought me my pill, I would play the part of the compliant, sick daughter. I'd put the pill in my mouth, take the glass of water, and pretend to swallow. The moment she left the room, I'd spit the pill out into a tissue and hide it. I labeled a small Ziploc bag for each day, tucking the tiny white tablet inside with the date written in permanent marker. These were my evidence. Then, I would go into the bathroom and take one of the correct 125 mcg pills from a small stash I had created. I had carefully counted out a week's worth of the octagonal pills and hidden them in an empty bottle of vitamin C at the back of my own closet. It was risky, but I had to start getting the proper medication into my system. I needed my strength and my clarity of mind back to see this through. In my new journal, I documented every single interaction. Date and time, 7:15 a.m. Wednesday. Event, Mom brought morning medication. Details, handed me one small, round, white pill, visually consistent with the 100 mcg prescription. Action taken, feigned ingestion, retained pill as evidence. Took one 125 mcg pill from my private stash at 7:20 a.m. I also started logging my physical and mental state. I noted my energy levels, my cognitive function, my mood. Within 3 days of being on the correct dosage, I felt a noticeable difference. The thickest layer of fog began to dissipate. It was like a radio slowly coming into tune, the static clearing and the music becoming audible again. This progress became another crucial part of my log. I was proving, day by day, that with the correct medication, I was improving. This would directly contradict the narrative my mother had been spinning for Dr. Chen and everyone else. The most difficult part was maintaining the facade. I had to pretend to still be sick. When my mother asked how I was feeling, I had to force myself to say, "Still so tired, Mom," even when I felt a surge of energy I hadn't experienced in years. I had to feign lethargy, to move slowly, to forget things. It was a sickening performance. I was gaslighting my gaslighter, using her own manipulative tactics against her. The irony was bitter. I also reached out to Liam. I needed an ally, someone on the outside who could help me and serve as a witness. I asked him to meet me at a coffee shop near our house, telling my mom I just needed a change of scenery for an hour. She was reluctant, but eventually agreed, probably thinking I was too weak to do anything but sit there. When I saw Liam, I burst into tears. I told him everything. I showed him the pictures on my phone of the different pills. I showed him my logbook. He listened in horrified silence, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to absolute fury. "Steph, I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined this," he said, his voice low and shaking with anger. This is evil." "I know," I whispered, wiping my eyes. "And I need your help. I need to get out of there, but I need to do it the right way. I want her held accountable, Liam. She stole years of my life." Liam, ever the logical software developer, immediately shifted into problem-solving mode. Okay. The logbook is brilliant. That's your core evidence. You need to keep it up. We need to establish a clear, documented pattern of her behavior, and you need a witness for the next step. He suggested I get my own dashcam for my car, a simple one that also recorded audio inside the vehicle. "Next time you have a doctor's appointment, you drive. Tell her you want to try to feel a little bit of independence. Record the conversation in the car. Talk about your symptoms, about the medication." Her responses could be incriminating. His idea was perfect. It added another layer of evidence. I ordered the camera that day. My plan was expanding, becoming more solid. I wasn't just collecting pills in a baggie anymore. I was building a case. Every detailed entry in my logbook, every photo, every secretly taken pill was a brick in the wall of justice I was constructing around my mother. The sick, helpless girl she had tried to create was fading away, and in her place was a meticulous, patient, and vengeful strategist. She thought she was in control, but her reign was coming to an end. She just didn't know it yet. With Liam now fully on board, my resolve hardened. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in deception. I continued my daily charade, logging every pill, every symptom, and every conversation. The dashcam arrived, and I installed it in my car, positioning it to capture the interior of the car perfectly. The audio recording was crystal clear. The correct dosage of medication was working wonders. My mind was sharp, my energy was returning, and the depression that had been my constant companion began to lift. It was an incredible feeling, but I had to hide it. I forced myself to walk with a slight drag, to speak in a monotone, and to complain of fatigue and joint pain. Every time I lied to my mother's face, a part of me curdled with disgust, but I knew it was necessary. I was a prisoner playing the part of a model inmate while secretly digging an escape tunnel. My next appointment with Dr. Chen was scheduled for a Friday. This was my chance to use the dashcam. The night before, I brought it up with my mother. "Mom, I was thinking I'd like to try driving to Dr. Chen's tomorrow," I said, trying to sound hesitant. "Just to see if I can, to feel a little normal." Her expression tightened instantly. "Oh, I don't think that's a good idea, Stephanie. Your focus isn't what it used to be. It's not safe. I'll drive you, of course." "Please, Mom," I pressed gently. "It's important to me. If I get tired, you can take over. I just want to try." After a bit more back and forth, she finally relented, probably calculating that it would be another opportunity for me to fail, reinforcing my dependence on her. "All right," she said with a sigh, "but I'll be watching you like a hawk." The next day, I made sure the dashcam was recording before she got in the car. The drive to the doctor's office was tense. I followed Liam's advice and started a conversation about my health. "I'm so frustrated, Mom," I said, letting my voice sound weary. "I feel like this new dose isn't working either. I'm just as tired as I was before." "I know, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with sympathy. The camera recorded her turning to me, her face a perfect picture of concern. "It's so unfair. Your body is just so sensitive. Maybe you'll never be able to handle the full dose." "What am I going to tell Dr. Chen? He's going to think I'm making it up," I said, baiting the hook. "You just tell him the truth," she said soothingly. "Tell him you're still exhausted and foggy. Mommy will be right there with you. I'll make sure he understands. We just have to accept that this is your new normal for a while." Her words were chillingly perfect. On tape, she was actively encouraging me to report symptoms that, if I were taking the correct medication, should have been subsiding. She was coaching me on how to lie to my doctor to perpetuate her narrative. It was damning. The appointment itself was the next phase of the plan. Before we went in, I texted Liam. Showtime, he was waiting. Inside the examination room, with my mother sitting in the corner, I ran through my rehearsed list of complaints for Dr. Chen. I told him I felt no improvement, that my fatigue was overwhelming. Dr. Chen looked completely baffled. Stephanie, this makes no medical sense, he said, looking at my chart. At 125 mcg, we should be seeing a significant improvement. Your blood work from last week, which I just got back, is actually showing your levels moving toward the normal range. My mother shifted in her chair. But doctor, look at her, she can barely function. The numbers might say one thing, but her reality is another. This was my cue. I looked at Dr. Chen, my eyes welling with fake tears. I don't understand it. I'm taking my pill every single morning. Mom gives it to me herself. I glanced at my mother, who nodded in agreement, a pillar of maternal support. I know you are, Dr. Chen said gently. Maybe there's an issue with this specific batch from the pharmacy. It's rare, but it can happen. Or perhaps it's a counterfeit medication. He had taken the bait perfectly. I had researched this possibility. It was a plausible explanation that would allow for the next step without pointing a direct finger at my mother just yet. Is there a way to test the pills? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Absolutely, Dr. Chen said, his professional curiosity piqued. If you bring the bottle in, I can send a few of the pills to a lab we use for analysis. They can confirm the dosage and composition. My mother's face went pale. It was a flicker, so fast that if I hadn't been watching for it, I would have missed it. Oh, I don't know if that's necessary, she began. Of course it is, Mom, I said, cutting her off, my voice filled with desperation. If the medicine is bad, we need to know. I want to feel better. Dr. Chen agreed. Bring the current bottle to my office on Monday morning, Stephanie. I'll have the courier pick it up. We left the office, and the silence in the car was thick enough to cut W. With a knife. My mother was quiet, her hands clenched in her lap. I knew what she was thinking. She couldn't let me bring that bottle of 100 mcg pills to the doctor. She would have to swap them out for the correct 125 mcg pills before Monday, and I would be ready. That night, after she went to bed, I snuck into her bathroom. I took her key, unlocked the cabinet, and took the bottle of 125 mcg pills. I went back to my room, and using a pair of tweezers, I carefully placed a tiny, almost invisible mark of black permanent marker on the underside of 10 of the pills. It was a tiny dot, one that would be unnoticeable unless you were specifically looking for it. Then, I put the marked pills back in the bottle and returned it to her cabinet, once again leaving everything exactly as I found it. The trap was set. On Monday morning, my mother would find the correct bottle of medication and give it to me to take to the doctor, thinking she had outsmarted everyone. But she would be handing me the very evidence I needed to prove her crime. She was about to deliver the weapon, with her own fingerprints on it, directly into the hands of justice. The weekend was the longest of my life. I had to act normally while my mother was in a quiet panic. She was more attentive than ever, constantly asking how I felt, her eyes filled with a nervous energy I now recognized as fear. She was trying to figure out how to handle the situation with Dr. Chen, and I knew her only option was to swap the pills back. On Sunday night, she did exactly as I predicted. While she was loading the dishwasher, I heard the faint click of the medicine cabinet in her bathroom. A few minutes later, she came into the living room, holding my current prescription bottle, the one filled with the wrong pills. Stephanie, honey, I was just organizing the medicine cabinet, and I think I figured something out, she said, her voice a little too bright. I am so silly. It looks like when I picked up your new prescription, I put it in the back and kept using the old bottle by mistake. Can you believe it? Oh, I feel just terrible. She held out the correct bottle of 125 mcg pills, the one I had marked. This is the one you should have been taking. No wonder you haven't been feeling well. My goodness, I'm so sorry, sweetie. My mind is just not what it used to be. It was a brilliant performance. She was creating the perfect alibi, a simple, honest mistake from an overwhelmed caregiver. She expected me to be relieved, to forgive her instantly, and to call the whole thing off with Dr. Chen. I looked at the bottle, then at her face. I had to play my part one last time. "Oh, Mom, really? So it was just a mix-up?" "That's right," she said, her shoulders relaxing as she thought she had succeeded. "Just a silly mistake. You can take this bottle to Dr. Chen on Monday, and he'll see it's the right medicine. No need for any expensive tests." "You're right," I said, taking the bottle from her. "Thank you for figuring it out." I gave her a hug, my stomach churning at the physical contact. She had no idea she had just handed me her conviction. The next morning, I drove to Dr. Chen's office alone. I handed the bottle to his nurse and went to meet Liam at our designated spot, the local police station. Walking through those doors was one of the most terrifying and empowering moments of my life. We sat down with a detective, a kind-looking woman named Detective Miller. I was shaking, but I told her everything, right from the beginning. I laid out my evidence methodically. I gave her my logbook with its daily entries. I showed her the Ziploc bags containing the pills my mother had been giving me 2 weeks worth of the wrong dosage. I showed her the photos on my phone, and I gave her the dashcam's SD card. "My mother believes I am at the doctor's office right now, dropping off the bottle of pills she thinks she successfully swapped," I explained. "But I marked the pills from the higher dose bottle. When Dr. Chen sends them for analysis, the lab can confirm they are 125 mcg. And when you test the pills I've saved, you'll find they are 100 mcg. She knowingly and repeatedly gave me the wrong medication." Detective Miller listened intently, her expression growing more serious with every piece of evidence I presented. She was particularly interested in the dashcam recording. "Her encouraging you to lie to your doctor establishes intent," she said, nodding slowly. "This goes beyond a simple mistake." She told me they would need to coordinate with Dr. Chen and the lab, but that I had built an incredibly strong case. She also helped me get in contact with Adult Protective Services and arranged for an emergency protective order. I would not be going back to that house. Liam had already told me I could stay with him for as long as I needed. The final confrontation wasn't a dramatic, tearful showdown. It was quiet, clinical, and devastating. 2 days later, Detective Miller and Anat, her officer, went to my house. I was not there. They presented my mother with the evidence, the logbook, the lab results confirming the different dosages, and a transcript of the dashcam recording. They asked her about the mistake she had claimed to have made. When faced with the irrefutable proof, the fact that she had coached me to lie about my symptoms just hours before her supposed discovery of the mix-up, her story fell apart. According to Detective Miller, my mother simply crumpled. The mask of the caring mother dissolved, revealing the desperate, manipulative woman underneath. She confessed everything. Her terror of me leaving, of being alone after my father died, had twisted into a monstrous need to keep me dependent. She admitted to swapping the pills, thinking a mild, chronic illness would be enough to keep me home forever without doing real harm. She was arrested for adult endangerment and tampering with a consumer product. The news was a quiet explosion in my life. There was no triumph, no joy, just a profound, hollow sadness for the mother I thought I had, and for the years of my life I would never get back. The final scene of our life together wasn't in our home, but in a police interrogation room, under the cold, fluorescent lights of the truth. She had wanted to trap me in a glass cage of her making, but in the end, her own lies had become her prison. The aftermath of my mother's arrest was a whirlwind of legal proceedings, therapy sessions, and the daunting task of piecing my life back together. The story became a local news item for a few days. Mother poisons daughter to prevent her from moving out. Reading the headlines felt surreal, as if they were about someone else's tragic life. But it was my life, and now, for the first time in years, it was truly mine to live. Liam was my anchor. He helped me move my belongings out of my mother's house, now a crime scene sealed with police tape, and into his spare bedroom. Packing up my room was an emotional ordeal. I found old photos of my mom and me when I was a child, laughing, and happy. It was hard to reconcile the woman in those pictures with the person who had systematically betrayed me. I had to accept that both were real. The loving mother had, at some point, been consumed by fear and loneliness, leading her to commit an unforgivable act. The legal process was slow and draining. My mother, Brenda, pleaded guilty, which spared me the trauma of a trial. Her confession and the mountain of evidence I had collected left her with no other option. Her lawyer argued for leniency, citing mental health issues and extreme grief following my father's death. In the end, she was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3, and was mandated to undergo extensive psychiatric treatment. I was issued a permanent restraining order. I didn't attend the sentencing. There was nothing left to say. My physical recovery was surprisingly swift. On the correct medication, my thyroid levels stabilized within a few months. The energy returned to my body, the fog lifted from my brain, and my hair started to grow back. I looked in the mirror one morning and saw a glimpse of the old Stephanie staring back. Her eyes were just a little older, a little wiser, and a lot sadder. The emotional recovery was a much longer road. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma and familial abuse. We worked through the complex layers of my grief, anger, and the profound sense of betrayal. I had to mourn the loss of my mother, not just to prison, but the loss of the mother I thought I had. I learned about codependency and a psychological disorder called Munchausen's syndrome by proxy, where a caregiver induces illness in a person under their care to gain attention and sympathy. While my mother was never formally diagnosed with it, the patterns were eerily similar. With my health restored, I threw myself back into my work. I was able to take on a full-time workload again as a medical transcriptionist, and my focus was sharper than ever. I saved every penny I could. After 6 months of living with Liam, we finally did what we had dreamed of doing 3 years earlier. We signed a lease on an apartment downtown. Walking into our new, empty apartment for the first time was a moment I will never forget. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It was just a simple 2-bedroom apartment, but to me, it was a palace. It was freedom. It was a future. Liam and I stood in the middle of the empty living room, and I just cried. They weren't tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and gratitude. Life is different now. It's quieter, but it's real. I've learned to trust myself again, to listen to that small voice inside me that whispers when something is wrong. My friendship with Liam has blossomed into the most stable and loving relationship I could have ever hoped for. He saw me at my absolute worst and helped me fight my way back to the light. I don't know if I will ever speak to my mother again. Her first parole hearing is in a little over a year, and I'm sure she will try to contact me. I'm not sure what I will do. Forgiveness is a complicated thing, and I haven't found it yet. What I have found, however, is peace. I find it in the simple act of waking up in the morning and feeling strong. I find it in making my own breakfast, in managing my own medication, in walking out my own front door to live a life of my own choosing. My mother tried to pause my life indefinitely, but she failed. She only managed to press pause. Now, I've hit play, and I don't plan on stopping ever again.